Hello everyone, I'm Nu-Trix, and today we're looking into how you could upgrade your home studio to a critical listening environment. Okay, my goal here in this video is not to tell you how to rebuild a studio from scratch. This video is about use what you have, a room, and understand the principle of acoustics and use the right approach to position, install, adapt the room so that when you're listening in that room to your mix, you hear something that is honest. When I say honest, is that the goal of a critical listening environment or the goal of a critical listening system is to hear what's on the hard drive. Have you ever played back one of your songs to your friend's place? You knew that this song was good, that there's a lot of bass, the mix is nice, the guitar or the synth is just at the right place. And when you play it back to your friend's place, there's no bass. It's thin. And the guitar is in your face so loud that everything else is low. You're just like, what's this? That wasn't the mix I had at home. And when you go back to your place, you play it back and it sounds the way you want it. It sounds fat. There's a lot of bass. You go, okay, how? The goal of mixing in a critical environment and to master in a very critical environment, you want that mix to be able to translate to one place to the other. Most of us don't have the luxury of having a full space for music. In my case, I've got my office. Acoustically speaking, this room is too small. There's going to be a lot of artifacts and errors, but I'll manage and I'll explain how I approach this because of that. There's a lot of good content and explanation and websites and video explaining how you should approach making your room into a better sounding room. It's hard to understand, and sometimes there's just really wacky stuff there that you shouldn't trust at all. I don't say I'm the best, but I did build at least 20 some studios in the last 30 years. I did build a 3 from scratch, with the spec of the floors and the walls and the ceiling, isolation, all that stuff. But today's video is about using what you already have. Maximizing that one room so that your listening environment does not fail you. Because that's the main problem. If what you hear in your room is falsified by the room itself and the speakers and the way everything is located and the environment, basically, then you will not be able to make the right call and mix correctly or master correctly. I'm going to put links below about different websites. If you want to go further into these concepts, you can go and watch on these websites. And there's also graphics I'm going to use. I didn't build any of these graphics. They're from these websites. And most of them are websites of brands that they make the acoustic treatment and the material you can use to treat your room so it sounds good. So Relax, Prime Acoustics, GIK Acoustics, Oral Exchange, and others. They'll all be down in the description. Let's dive in. First of all, let's explain what the listening environment or listening system is. When I talk about listening system, I don't talk only about your console and speakers. I talk about the whole chain between your hard drive. So when you press play in your DAW, these are digital numbers, so zeros and ones. The digital numbers, they go out and they go to your audio interface. The audio interface converts that into analog signal, so it's converted into electricity. So the software is the first, it's part of the quality of the sound that you hear. The interface also converts into analog. Then the cable go into a mixer, amplifier, depending on what you have. In my case, it goes into a mixer that has a little control room system. Then from there, it goes into the amplifier of my speakers because my speakers are amplified. So the amplifier is inside the speakers. It goes straight into the speaker, and the speakers, turned on with the calibrated values at the back. Then they play out, they convert then the electricity that is on the cable into acoustic messages. So it will push on the surrounding molecule of air and will create compression and rarefaction. So basically a wave of sound, just like waves in a puddle when you throw a rock in it and you see wave going away from the impact. Same logic. But here, instead of having an impact, like when I do this, the sound goes away from my two hands clapping. But when my speaker is playing, the sound goes away from the speaker cone and into my ears. And then it's converted into nerve information, goes to my brain, and my brain goes, ha, here's a clap. My decoder in my brain understands what it is, and then I can enjoy what I'm listening to. So that's the whole listening system. So everywhere, if you have something failing in there, you don't have a good quality of listening, and you cannot do a critical decision. Let's say you've got a good software. It's easy to have good software. Most of the audio playback system today, they're good. So if you got a good software, a good DAW, you have a good audio interfaces. Today, even the affordable ones are good enough to have a good listening. It goes into your speaker. Let's say you have a speaker made for home studio, because there's a difference between a hi-fi system or a TV system and a studio speaker. Studio speakers should be more honest, and it's not there to amplify the good parts and suppress the bad parts of the sound, because if it does that, then it's not being honest. You should hear that there's bad parts in your mix, and you should know about it so you can fix them. So you want it to be brutally honest. So you want them to be flat as possible so that they don't change the color of the sound playing back into your system. But then, let's say all of this is good, but then it leaves the speaker and goes to your brain or your ears first. Well, that traveling between that, it actually hits on everything around it. It's going to bounce off walls, bounce off surfaces. It's going to interact with everything in your room. It will change because of that. So it means that the shape of your room will change the sound. What is in your room will change the sound. Let's just go back into talk about something first, is that the directivity of a speaker. A speaker sends signal to me, but frequencies are not made equal, meaning that higher the frequency, the more channelized or focused it will be, and the lower the frequency, the more diffused and omnidirectional it will be. So the bass frequency will play back out of a speaker at the front and at the back, whereas the high frequency would only be a very pinpoint laser sound to your ears. Of course, then there's different type of design of speakers that make them a wider sweet spot and all that stuff, but the principle is that the higher the frequency, the more focused it is. But it means that in some cases, just moving your head like this, you're out of the sweet spot and you're not hearing these frequencies well enough or critical anymore. Whereas the lower frequency, it doesn't really matter. You can move more and it's going to stay, you're going to still stay with you. So you need to understand that. And it also means that when the signal goes away from the speaker, some frequencies will go straight to you or straight in front of the speaker, and others will spread and hit the walls and ceiling and the floors, and other will hit the back wall and come back to you. So depending on the frequencies, the reaction you'll get will be different, and it will interact with your room in a different way at different frequencies. The typical problems you have in a studio or in a room basically is, first of all, the stereo image. Are you positioned at the right place between your speakers, and are they positioned the right place compared to your walls and ceiling and all that? Then the other problem you have is what we call, well, the result would be hollow sound or missing frequencies or boosting frequencies or parts of the frequencies you don't hear correctly, you're not sure, and it's hard to understand the lyrics, or the guitar is less obvious. It could be a mix of reflection, so frequency hitting the walls and then they come back to you, but they're combining the original signal with the reflection. So then some of the frequencies are out of phase and they will disappear, and some are in phase, they're going to be doubling. So you have all these weird artifacts, results of combining the direct signal with the reflections, and it creates problems in the frequencies. And this is mostly the mid and the high frequencies. And then you got flutter echoes. Floater echoes is basically, you can even slap your hands and hear, if you hear a brrr, a spring type of sound or a very short echo, it's usually because that high and mid frequency is bouncing between two parallel walls and is just the right length to be a multiple of the length of the space between the walls, and then it just bounces off very quickly. So then imagine you have a snare in your song that is exactly at that frequency. So you might hear a brrr, brrr, and you go, that's not in my mix. And you try to fix your mix and it's not in the mix. The room is creating it. So that's where you need to measure all this before starting to mix so you don't hear these artifacts, and then you start fixing them and they're not there. Then the other one is the bass. The bass could be too much, not enough, or not at all. In some cases you move a couple of feet away and then there's a lot of bass, and then you move again and then it disappears, and then we call it standing wave. Standing wave is the phenomena that bass frequencies seem to be staying in the same space because the way they're bouncing off the walls, they're getting louder in volume and some position. And when you move to another section, you're at the place where it crosses zero. To understand bass in a room, imagine that basically the room is like a resonator. The length and the height and the width of your room is a resonator for a specific frequency, or a couple of, maybe 3, 4 specific frequencies that are multiple of length, width, height, diagonal of your room. So they will by nature resonate in the size and the dimension of your room. So the worst case scenario, you would have a cube room. And with a cube, you have the same height, width, and length. So the bass that is enhanced will be the same for all the sizes. So it's going to be way too difficult to get rid of it. It's going to be so loud. And then you got a null point behind it. You have a space where you have no presence of that frequency at all. If you talk about a rectangular room having 3 different sizes, you're going to have 3 different problem or enhanced bass frequency or standing waves. There's a lot of reading you can do about the sizes and dimension, that if you build a room from scratch by having these dimension, you're kind of moving away these frequencies that could be that will be naturally enhanced and resonate in your room, but you're moving them away so they don't amplify each other by amplifying the same region of frequencies. I'm not going to go there because today I'm saying, well, what can I do with the room I have? So in the room I have, I'm not going to push the wall there. There's the bathroom over there. I'm not going to push the wall over there. That's the heating system. There, it's the foundation, and this is the foundation. So I won't move the wall. I will live with this. But what can I do to make this space the most honest possible? Before we go into what we can do, I just want to be clear that there's a huge difference, and people don't understand. They even in the ads, when you look for materials like this, when you buy stuff like that, this is not acoustic isolation. This is absorption. This is a way to, what we call, create acoustic treatment. I would also call this is an EQ for a room. By putting this in your room, you're EQing the signature response of your room. So this is kind of EQing your room and controlling how much frequency will be bouncing back to your listening point. But this is not isolation at all. Audio isolation or soundproofing a room is a lot more difficult than just treating it. Isolation means controlling how much frequencies coming in and coming out of the room and limiting the impact of the transmission. And it means that you need to create absorption in the wall, and you have to mechanically separate the vibration of the internal room that you're in to the outside space. So basically you need to have a floating room inside a room. That's another business. If you're interested in that, write down in the comments, and I'll do another video just about talking about what are the different approaches you should think about when you build a studio to save on the cost. But today, the goal is to talk about treatment. You want the response of your room to be honest. I'm still going to hear the truck driving in the street, but I know it's not part of my mix. So I'm not going to try to compensate for it. I know that if somebody talks to me, it comes from the other room. I know that if I play too loud, my neighbor is going to be mad at me. So it's not going to be isolating. So this will not stop sound from going from inside your room to the outside, or at least not enough that it's going to be useful. It's useful to controlling how you're listening to music, how you control the room interaction with the signal that you play in the room. So it's an EQ absorption, but it's not isolation. This is really important. And even when you buy stuff, they say sound isolation. You go, no, it's not. This is not. No way. It's not isolation. Let's just understand how sound interacts. So if a signal is playing back from the speaker, if it hits a flat, hard surface, it will bounce. Just like light on a mirror, when sound hits a surface, a hard, flat surface, it will bounce back with the same angle but inversed to the other side. So, and the harder, denser the flat surface, the more frequency, the more energy is reflected. So if you play a sound in a underground parking, well, you see there's a lot of reflection because it's all cement and it's all flat and it's very dense. So there's not enough energy in the sound to move the material. So it actually hits it and then it doesn't move. So the energy comes back. That's why you have so much reverb and echo in these places. If your material is in gyps or wood, then some of it goes through it. So most of our house, there's some signal that goes through it. And if your material is some kind of a fiber, it will go through it and it would actually lose energy at some frequencies because it will move the fiber and will spend, if you want, or use that energy to move the fiber. So if you go through a couch, if you go to a mattress, if you go through a drapes, it will actually diminish the energy at the other side of the material. So this will be absorption. So you want to know about it. So you know that if you have this in your room, it's actually going to help you. You know, if you have carpets on the floor, well, it's less reflective than if you have a, marble floor. That's for sure. And also the shape. If the shape is flat and dense, it's going to be a very nice way to reflect. If it's chaotic and porous, so imagine having a wall of brick wall, for example. Some people have an old brick wall in their house. Well, the brick wall is not a flat surface. It has some texture to it, and it's dense. It's still a heavy material, but then there's grain in it. So the frequency, when it hits it, it gets in all these different holes and depth and texture. And different frequencies will react differently, and you'll have more of a diffuse sound. It's not going to be a reflection as on a flat surface. It'll be more of a diffuse signal. It's useful in bigger studio to have a diffused wall, usually at the back, so you have some sound coming from the back of the room, tells you that you're in the room, but it's not an echo. It's not a slap behind your head. So the solution, or the first thing you should do to optimize the sound of your studio, is positioning everything. So it would be, first of all, position everything. You should have a center position. When you're mixing, you should be center from left to right. So you should actually take your tape out and measure the width of your room and say, this is exactly where I should be sitting. It's here. You measure that space and you say divided by 2, that's where I am. And then from the front to the back, you should think about positioning yourself at about 38%. That's the logic. When you say 38%, is that in the middle of the room, you're at 50. And if you're at the first quarter, you're going to be at 25. But if I'm 38, I'm kind of in between. And the logic of 38 goes with the understanding of the standing waves. Standing wave, again, your frequency is bouncing off the wall and it coming back. So there's one frequency that is exactly the multiple of the length of my wall to my wall. It means that in the middle, it's at the maximum loudness. So that frequency is going to be really loud in the middle. Twice that, an octave higher, this one will go from 0 up, crosses 0 down. So it will vibrate twice in the length of my room. That means that in the first 25%, I am at the maximum volume of this frequency. And when I'm at 50% in the middle of my room, I'm at 0 value because that frequency is not moving. It's vibrating always at the same place. So I have 0 value here and twice as loud here, or actually boosted frequency here for that frequency. So by putting myself between my 25 and 50, not on any of those two, I have some presence of these two frequencies be without having them to be maxed out and very loud. So it's a way to not get rid of the bass frequency, but to control how much it's going to affect me. Remember that controlling your acoustic in your room does not mean you'll get rid of the problems. It means that you're going to push the problem away from your listening position. You're not going to get rid of bass problem. You're just going to move them away from your sweet spot. That's the logic. So you have 38%. So you measure front to back and you multiply it 38% and then say, well, in my case, I should be at 36, which is here. That's where I physically should have my ears. So should have my head right here when I play back. That's where I'm at for 38% of my room. My room is small, very small. So that's where I should be when I'm listening. And my speakers should be in triangular mode. So this one's at a corner, this one's at the corner. Still triangular, but when I measure it, they're way too far because the other point is to have them in what we call equilateral triangle shape. The other way to measure it is to say, I'm put a stand here. That's going to mimic where I should be standing. And I can measure the corner, from the tweeter, and the tweeter should be at ear level. And it's too high right now. It's hitting here. So I'm going to have to change the height of my shelf, or I could actually position my speaker on the other side so the tweeter is at my ear level, and it's fine. It doesn't have to be, the bass could be up or down, doesn't really matter. Or I could put it on flat instead. So there's different ways to put it. But I should measure this distance from the tweeter to my listening point, have exactly, let's say I have 44, exactly 44. I should have exactly 44. And between them also be at exactly 44, which is not the case. But because I've got laptop, screen, iPad, I put my speaker away from that. So they're too wide. The effect will be that my stereo image will be wider than it should be. And if I try to recreate acoustic realities and say, this is where it should be there, everything's going to be out of space. My false center will be very narrow. And then everything's going to be very quickly on the sides where they should be here physically. My speaker that is here should be physically here. That's where it should be. If I measure correctly and I have my 44, I'm not even sure it's 44, but it should be around that. So it means that it should be around, just outside here, my corner. So I'm going to have to rethink about the position of everything and how I can put it there. Maybe I can have a stand that just come up here and there. And then I might have to change my stand, my microphone stand. It should be maybe somewhere else. So it forces me to rethink how everything's going to be laid out. But that's it. It's a little bit too wide and it's not pointing to my ears. So I'm going to have to or if I don't want to change the shelf, I can actually put angles under it. You can buy these, about the same material as this, but a bit more denser. These are absorption panels, angled for speakers. So I could have them maybe just like that. And drop to my ear point. It'll be also, so I'm going to have to look at the price and figure out which one's the best for me. In the room, what you're going to see on the side here is when your speaker plays, it's going to go and bounce off here and you come back here. It's going to go and bounce off over there on the other wall and then come back to me. This one's going to bounce direct. I'm going to have direct signal, and it's going to also bounce there because it goes like this. The directivity of the speaker will make it so that some frequency, they are very straight, and others, they bounce there and come back. Some of them bounce at the front and come back. Some of their bounce on the wall and come back. So it means that I'm combining all of them when I'm listening to my music. So basically, I should put stuff. That's where these absorption panel are good. So I have 12 of them. So maybe I'm gonna have to unglue them and create a pattern over there. But I've got a lot of gear, and it means that part, the gear, I don't need to treat that too much, because it breaks down the frequencies, so it's going to be okay. So I'm going to put at the back this. I'm going to probably have to attach my cable somewhere else, or maybe here instead. And I'm going to have to do the same thing on the other side. You don't see the other side, but there's a metal panel there. So I'm going to have to take out the metal panel, and I've got all these adapters that I have, iPads and iPhone adapters. I've got it's attached to the wall. So I'm going to have to clean that up and fill that with these treatment. So I've got 12 of them. And I should also put them at the front, because these speakers being here now, where they should be, some of the frequency will go behind them and hit the wall, and some will be behind the screen here, and it might bounce between the screen and the wall and create some artifacts that I don't want. So I'm going to have to treat all of that section to be sure that I diminish the reflection from the front. So by default in your studio, if you can, you put absorption in the front to your listening ears, to a listening position, because after that, the frequency bouncing off there, they go to the back. So then in the back, you can add stuff. Maybe if you find that you have too much stuff reflection from the back, you could also put that. That's pretty sure that some frequency will go and bounce at the back and come back here. Like bounce from this speaker to the back and then for the wall and come back to my listening point. So having some absorption at the back will probably be good at one point. You could also put at your back just a shelf of books. Or again, if you have one wall that is a brick wall, if it's at your back, you've got natural diffusion. It's part of your building. So you might think about where to, how to move your space so that your listening point, you can absorb at the front, maybe diffuse at the back. Or if you don't diffuse at the back, you can just put half panel, panel, nothing, panel, nothing, panel. So you only have after reflection. That'll be good. That'll be also the same thing, and will cost a lot less than diffusion panel. I'm not even going to talk about diffusion panel. For a small room in the house, put absorption, but only half of the space, like checkered board absorption, be perfect. And then something we all forget is that the ceiling. In a real studio designed for that, often the ceiling is angled down towards the front. I mean, if you hit the ceiling with frequencies, the angle makes it so that the frequency or bands, they're reflected to the back, and then you absorb them at the back. In the case of a normal home studio, well, your ceiling is flat, parallel to the floor, and you're going to have bouncing frequencies like that. So you're probably will have to put some treatment at the top here, so you control. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It has to be between the speakers and you, because it bounces there, it comes back here. So it doesn't have to be everywhere. It could be just, if my speaker is here and I'm here, I just need this amount of treatment on the ceiling, and that's it. And a bass trap. There's two ways to control your bass. I'm going to buy bass traps. I'm going to put them in the corner. Bass traps are different shapes. In this case, you have these here. I'm going to buy something like that. I'm going to attach them to the wall over there at the front. They're going to be being in the corners, because in the corners, that's where the frequency boosts themselves naturally. And also it's easier to put them in the corner. It can be between the ceiling and the wall. Anywhere they are in the room, you're going to control more bass as you put more bass traps. I'm going to put some bass traps there and there. Right now I've got none of it. And I'm thinking of buying a sub. The reason of buying a sub is that When you control your frequencies and you still feel that your listening point is too bassy or not enough bassy, one way to control is to add a sub to your room, to your playback system. And your sub, you basically can sometimes control a value at the back or change the position on the sub. And by changing the position, you're kind of moving your standing wave at different places. So if you can move it away, you can move it away from your listening point without moving your listening point, just by moving your sub in your room, then you're a winner. You found a way to control the quality of your listening point without moving your listening point. So it's part of my list. There's a good chance I'm going to buy a sub. But before that, I'll measure the room. So I'll measure with everything like it is right now. I'll change the treatment. I'll measure again. And if I still need to control more of it, I'll buy a sub and I'll measure again. Very soon, I'll make a video about measuring. And I'll use Room EQ Wizard. It's kind of a free software, easy to use, but you need to understand how to read the results and how to really do the measuring. So that's it. I'll dive into that next time. I want to keep the cost low. So that's why I'm keeping this into getting the most out of what I already have. And anyway, I'm not going to move my studio anywhere else. So I have to live with this. But if I can bring that to the most honest that I can, that's going to be enough, I think, for me to do a good mix that I can actually more easily translate to another place. I hope this is useful. I know it's a lot of stuff. I try to make it simple. If you want more information, if it's not clear enough, write down in the comments. I might do other videos to re-explain some part of it or go deeper into bass and bass traps or different type of acoustic paneling. I could also do another video about that. We'll see. We'll see how you like it and how much question you have. Stay safe, make new music, and try to get a critical listening environment. Cheers.